Good evening, and thank you for joining us for the first of 19 candidate forums for the 2021 general elections in the Cayman Islands, being hosted by the Cayman Islands Chamber of Commerce in association with Foster's. My name is Mike Gibbs, and I have the honor of being the current president of the Chamber of Commerce. I will also be one of the panelists asking the questions this evening, along with Mr. Colin Robinson, the Chamber Treasurer, and who is also the chairperson of the Insurance Managers Association of Cayman. I'd like to begin my opening comments by thanking each of the East End candidates, Mccleary Frederick, Arden Mclean, and Isaac Rankin, for accepting the Chamber's invitation to participate in this forum. Your willingness to appear on the same platform demonstrates to voters that you take the democratic process seriously and are ready to respond to a series of questions on the top issues as identified by a recent online chamber survey. More than 400 responses and more than 200 questions have been submitted via the survey, and these will help to frame the questions for this evening's forum. There is certainly not enough time to ask all the questions, but we will do our best to cover the topics that have been identified as the most important to the Cayman Islands and the East End constituency. When the Chamber was established in 1965, the goal was to create an organization that supports, promotes, and protects the interests and welfare of its members and the wider community. Being nonpartisan, we have hosted forums every election year since the 1988 election. So for 9 elections, we have provided members of the community with an opportunity to hear from their candidates and educate themselves before Election Day. These forums have taken weeks of planning and preparation, with all the credit going to the hard-working Chamber staff, and would not have been possible without the financial support of our sponsors, Foster's, Affinity, Bodden's Legal and Corporate, and DART. So a big thank you to them. Would also like to extend a wholehearted thanks to our media partners, Cayman Mile Road, Cayman Life TV, Government Information Services, and ICCI FM for agreeing to broadcast tonight's forum. It is the first time that we have live streamed the forums on the internet, and we hope that this new format will enable even more people to watch them in the comfort of their home. It is now time to begin this evening's forum, and I will therefore turn the proceedings over to Will Pinault, CEO of the Chamber, who will serve as this evening's moderator, and he will explain the rules of the forum and introduce the East End candidates.
Well, good evening, and thank you, President Mike, for those opening comments. Here are the rules for this evening's forum. Each candidate will be asked 10 questions. You will have 2 minutes to elaborate if you choose to do so. A timer will appear on the TV screen to show you how much time you have remaining. Each candidate will be allowed to answer the question without interruption and is free to differ with an opinion or position of a fellow candidate during their allotted response time. Candidates are asked to deal solely with the issues. And at the conclusion of the forum, each candidate will be allowed 2.5 minutes to deliver a closing statement. The seating positions of the candidates were selected randomly by ballot and will determine the order of questioning. I would now like to introduce the candidates for the East End constituency in this year's election. We'll begin with my far right, Isaac Rankin. Mr. Douglas Rankin is the son of Isaac and Rita Rankin. His grandfather was Burnell Dixon, whose father was Captain George Dixon, after whom the park in East End is named. He attended school in Jamaica until approximately age 7, before returning to Cayman with his family, thereafter attending the East End Primary School. He went on to receive his high school diploma from the Cayman Islands High School. He attended the Cable and Wireless College in the UK and completed the B.Tech Technician National Diploma. Mr. Rankin also attended various industry-related training and seminars in the areas of business and project management. After completing high school, Mr. Rankin worked for a year at the Cayman Islands Public Works Department. He then went on to work at Cable and Wireless and attended the Cable and Wireless College in the early 1990s. Through hard work and dedication, he progressed through the business unit from technician to technical supervisor and then into customer engineering manager roles. In the 1990s, Mr. Rankin was transferred into the Cable and Wireless Regional Office as the technical support manager to international account managers. In July 2003, Mr. Rankin left Cable and Wireless and with a few friends started Business Solutions Technologies Group Limited. He has 3 children and 3 grandchildren and resides in East End. Our next candidate is Mr. Mccleary Frederick. Mr. Mccleary Frederick is a retired civil servant with more than 36 years of serving the people and government of the Cayman Islands. During his tenure, he served in the Public Works Department. From the Public Works Department, he moved to the Department of Planning, where he was appointed Chief Building Control Officer and played a pivotal role in establishing the Building Control Unit and developing and adopting the Cayman Islands Building Code. Mr. Mccleary then transitioned to the then portfolio of Internal and External Affairs, during which time he managed the establishment of a permanent and full-time disaster management agency, Hazard Management Cayman Islands, eventually being promoted to Director of Hazard Management. In May 2017, Mr. Mccleary made history as the first international recipient of the Lifetime Achievement Award at the Florida Governor's Hurricane Conference in recognition of his contribution to disaster management. Mr. Mccleary has represented the Cayman Islands at various meetings and committees in the region and internationally. He has always been a resident of East End, and with his experience and qualifications, he believes this makes him the ideal person to represent the East End community. He is married and has 2 sons, 2 daughters-in-law, and 6 grandchildren. Our next candidate is Mr. Arden Mclean. Mr. Arden Mclean has represented the electoral district of East End since 2000. During the period 2005 to 2009, he served as minister responsible for communications, works, and infrastructure with the People's Progressive Movement. This marked a period of significant improvements to the infrastructure of the Cayman Islands. Since 2013, Mr. Mclean has served as an independent member of the Parliament of the Cayman Islands, and since 2019 as leader of the opposition. Early in his career, Mr. Mclean went to sea, where he spent 8 years as a marine engineer. During this period, he attended the Seamen's Church Institute in New York, where he earned his marine engineering qualifications. On returning to the Cayman Islands, he joined Caribbean Utilities Company Limited, where he spent 18 years working in various departments, including engineering systems analysis and customer service. He retired as a manager in 2000 to enter politics, where he believed he could make a greater contribution to his country. Mr. Mclean is married and has 2 sons. At this time, we're going to take a short commercial break, and we're going to please stay tuned. We're going to have some short messages from our sponsors, so stay tuned. We'll be right back as we start the questioning for the East End Constituency Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forum.
Behind everything we do is a promise. Better. Better because we care, because we all have a common goal, to be better at cooking, to be better at eating right, and taking care of ourselves, to live in a better community, to just feel better. Today and tomorrow and the next day. Do it for you. Do it for them. Do it to prove something to yourself. Do it to carry on a family recipe. Or just because. But when you aim for the stars, better just works. We're Fosters. And we're better. Because of you, because of them, because of this place. And because we care.
Welcome back to the Chamber of Commerce District Candidates Forums for the constituency of East End. I'm now going to turn it over to the President of the Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Michael Gibbs, and he'll begin the questioning.
Thank you, Will, and good evening again. Our first question will actually be directed to Mr. Isaac Rankin, and then the other two candidates will follow on with their answers to the first question. Our first question is, why have you decided to run in this year's election, and why should the voters in East End place their trust and confidence in your abilities to represent them?
Good evening, Michael. I've decided to run and put myself up for election in East End again this year because I feel that I have a lot to contribute to our district. I grew up in East End after coming from Jamaica from attending school. I grew up in East End. I saw what it was like there. I grew up understanding difficulties that we faced then, and we still experience some of those difficulties now. I feel that I can make a contribution, make a big impact through policy decisions and help people attain a better way of life in East End. I feel that the people should put their trust in because when I ran and I was not successful in 2017, I ensured that I worked in the district, continued being visible, helping contribute to the development of the district whatever way I can, and I would certainly hope that they give me a trust because I believe that they have... Sorry, I just had a brain freeze then, but I certainly believe that they should give me the trust because of what I've done over the last 2 years, especially during the most recent pandemic. We have the COVID pandemic and what I've done to assist our community.
Thank you. Mr. Frederick, would you respond to that same question?
Well, after serving for 36 years, retiring in 2017, I felt the urge to do something again in service to the country. I feel that I would provide adequate representation to the people of East End at the national level as a member of parliament. While it is commendable to do a lot of stuff locally, I think nationally we need to have good representation. I've had the experience of working at a national level as a head of a department. And I think with my experience, my understanding of the way things work in government, I would be able to accomplish much for East End. The people of East End should trust me because they have trusted me before in senior government positions to look after the welfare of the people through various means. Most recently being Director of Hazard Management. And through that experience, I think that I will be able to represent the people of East End in the best way possible.
Thank you. Mr. McLean.
I have decided to run this election for re-election because of my proven track record. In almost 40 years, I have defended the people of East End. I have defended the people of East End. I've advocated on their behalf with honesty and integrity and justice for all. I have never, ever not been there in that district for the people of East End in particular, and the people of this country in general. And I believe with my proven track record that I have much more to contribute at this stage in my political career. I have shown that I am capable of understanding the system. I've shown that I am capable of standing in Parliament and defending the people of this country, especially those who are less in their economic position, their social positions. I have always been there to defend those and to uplift them. And I believe that I still can do that. I can still do that. And I believe the people of East End, again in particular, and this country in general, trust me, that I'm going to be honest with them. I'm going to tell them the truth. And I've always done that. And I believe that I'm the best person poised to continue to represent them.
Thank you. I believe we now move to our second question, which Mr. Robinson will present.
Yes, and we'll start this one with Mr. Frederick. Good evening. What 3 national issues would you seek to address if elected?
First issue is I think we need to, as a country, develop a national strategic plan. There's a lot of issues that we're faced with, and when you take on one issue at a time, you tend to lose some through the cracks. We did this exercise and we came up with Vision 2008. Some people think that it just sat on the shelves, but I can assure you that a lot of work went into it and a lot of work came out of it. And a lot of decision was made because of it. And it gave us a roadmap to the future. And I think with all the issues that we have, one of the things that we need to do is establish a national strategic plan. Second issue is our infrastructure. There's been a lot of talk about taking our population to 100,000. Taking our population to 100,000, while I understand the reasons behind it, if you don't have the infrastructure, I mean, just imagine what we have now. And you don't have the infrastructure to be able to manage 100,000 people in this country, the issues that we will face. So we need to plan the infrastructure. If we're going to go for 100,000 population, we need to plan for 100,000, not react after we get to 100,000. So we need to plan for it beforehand. I know education is always a hot topic. And my feeling with education is that we don't give it a chance to work. Every political cycle, we have a new system. Teachers don't get a chance to experience the system. Parents don't get a chance to understand the system. And we keep changing the system. It's like having a sword and you keep picking at it. It never heals. It never gets better. We have to decide where we're going to go, how we're going to get there, put a plan in place, and stick with it and follow it, and give it an opportunity to work.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick.
Those are the three of the issues that I think that we should address.
Okay, thank you. Mr. McLean, same question for you.
There are a multitude of issues that needs to be addressed from day one, whichever government wins this next general election. And I believe the one that is right in the forefront is this pandemic. We need to start thinking seriously of how we're going to open back up this country and what aspects of it we can open up and how quickly we can open it up. Our people have lost their livelihoods. In the service industry, we have people who do not have any work, and that is priority number one. But in tandem, I believe with that, I believe we also need to look at education. We need to talk about the devolution of responsibilities and authority down to the schools and cut out the Department of Education. It needs to be cut out. It needs to be put under an authority whereby the schools, the teachers, that's what they do. They teach children. They must take responsibility and accountability. In line with that, we need to talk about the pension. The pension in this country where people can retire with dignity. And more so since this pandemic, and we allowed people to withdraw from their pension. It is very important. Insurance is another one. We need to start making sure that the insurance in this country will allow people access to good health care. Even the government, this government has admitted that they have failed in reviewing the insurance. And if they have failed, I certainly don't want to see another government failing in that regard. It is important that our older people have access to good health care.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Rankin, same question.
From a national standpoint, the issues that I work on once elected, education, it's a political football. It's been a political football for several cycles. Each administration gets this thing called education, and they kick it all over the place. We need to start think and reevaluate what we want to do, right? We need to go back to the basics. Got to get back to the basics. We have to also include in the whole plan of revamping education, we have to include the components that will make a child successful in school. One of those components is the social well-being. And in this day and age, we also have to look at the technologies available to them, especially at home. Some parents can't afford it, and especially in this pandemic, no, right? So we have to look at education. Also, tourism reopening, but we have to also evaluate how we're going to reopen safely. Many people have lost their jobs, and in East End, a lot of people have been impacted by the closure of our borders. Right? We must be able to reopen safely and be able to protect our citizens, the most vulnerable at this time as well. We also have affordable health care. When people come to our country, the young people, and I say relatively young, from working age people to 45, 50, they're the ones that pay into the health insurance scheme, but they're not really using it. So when those same people now get to a point where they have to retire, they can no longer get health insurance. And it's a major, major problem for us. And they're the three areas that I believe that we must be able to focus on to make lives better for our people in East End.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to a sort of a closer to home question. What three projects and programs or issues would you champion for East End if elected? And Mr. Mclean, would start with you on this one.
There are a number of issues that needs to be addressed in East End. One of the issues that needs to be addressed in East End is the social problems issues that we have. I have forever been fighting with the family services to provide programs for the people of East End to address these social issues. I think that's one. I want to see a social worker in that district. Of course, they're telling me that that is outdated. Well, whether it's outdated or not, let's train social workers to deal with the social issues. Not only are they in East End, they're throughout this country, but I'm specifically talking about East End. I want to see us complete the East-West Arterial up to Frank Sound to get the people out of the traffic woes that they're experiencing. The last time anyone worked on it was me in 2009. And these are issues that causes stress, and it causes it affects our economy, and it affects people's well-being. And I believe that's one of the areas that we need to work on. But we also have to talk about bringing opportunities to the people of East End. Vision 2008, the people of East End said that they did not want East End to look like 7 Mile Beach. And by that, I got the message I got from that was they didn't want to see these high-rise buildings in East End. And that's their business. But I have to adhere to that, their wishes. And I believe there is opportunity for at least one more large hotel in East End. But we're not going 10 stories now. 7, I believe, is sufficient. And that will mean we're adhering to the wishes of the people of East End.
Thank you. Moving to Mr. Rankin, if you could answer the same question, please.
3 issues I would work on once I'm elected is, one, main priority one is traffic. We have a major traffic problem in this country, and it affects East End more than it affects most any other district in this country. That same traffic affects the quality of life for our East Enders. It's unconscionable that our people have to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to get their students dressed and fed before they leave home to get to town for 8 o'clock, right? I'm fortunate. I can leave home at 10 past 8 and I can get to town for 9 o'clock. But the people have to get their kids to school, so traffic is a major problem, and that's be one of the issues I work on. The other thing, we have cost of living, how it's affecting our people, and how more so, even now in this pandemic, where people have lost their jobs. Cost of living is very important when you're not earning anything. Even when you're earning minimum wage or just above minimum wage, you cannot live in this country based on minimum wage or even just slightly above it. We must be paid a sum of money, or people must be paid a sum of money that they can live and eat and drink and pay their bills, right? The other thing is, again, quality of life. We must be able to address these issues, and it stems, quite frankly, from the traffic issues. We must be able to address those issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Frederick.
When I'm elected, the first thing I would like to do is to establish a district council. We have a law that was passed to establish district council, but it was never enacted. And it's, in this day and age, as complicated as representation has gotten, you need to have that governance in the districts. Now, the law that was passed need to be amended to give the districts more authority and more responsibility. Because right now, as it just says that they would be established to assist the member. And there are some other issues that need to be done with that. So that would be the first thing I would try to get done, so that we can have people on the ground in the district to be able to manage the governance of the district in association with the representative. The second thing I would do is that we hear a lot that East End hasn't gotten anything, and we're lacking this, we're lacking that. One of the things I would like to do is a 10-year development plan for East End to determine what it is that we need, and then to come up with strategies of how to accomplish that. 10 years, if it's a people's plan, they will ensure that whoever comes after will make sure that those things are envisioned, that have been envisioned, are seen through. I have 2 grandkids going to East End Primary, and you know, I was very disheartened to find that East End Primary just barely passed the school inspection. You know, and the things that they're failing at is the sciences, math, science, English, where they're slow. You know, I had my kids go to East End Primary for a time, and because of the issues that he just mentioned with traffic, I actually had to move them because we just couldn't manage. So I think the children of East End deserve better. If you go up to the school, they have a little yard to play in, an old classroom building, and I think that we need to improve those facilities and do more to help the students and kids in East End.
Thank you.
Next question will focus on traffic. This will start this with Mr. Rankin. Traffic congestion and road safety are among the top concerns impacting residents in the eastern districts in Grand Cayman in a recent Chamber Public survey. Aside from the construction of the east-west arterial road, what would you recommend to improve traffic conditions?
Yeah, traffic, that's a major issue, yes, for East End, as I mentioned previously. One of the things, we have to make some hard decisions. One of those hard decisions may have to be that we have to put a moratorium on vehicle imports. We may have to go down that route, and I'm quite willing to make that decision to do that. The other thing, we have to be able to have flexi time in our work schedule. With the pandemic, when everybody was at home, we saw how easy the traffic was then. Why can't some of the big businesses in town allow their employees to continue working from home to help alleviate some of this traffic congestion? It's no sense us building many more roads if we all going to get bottlenecked at one point. Yeah? We can do as much construction as we want, but it's not going to help the situation if we don't do some other things in conjunction with that. The other thing that we need to do as well, too, we have to look and ensure that we have a reliable public transportation system. For far too long, East Enders has suffered because the public bus service what we have the public bus service now is not conducive for what we do in East End. They do not come and visit and finish their route. They stop at Northside Junction, or they go the other way and stop, or they turn around in Bordentown. And people in East End are waiting to get to town in order to make their appointments or what other activities they need to do. one of the fixes to that maybe is for the government to invest somewhat into the public transportation system. And the other thing we could possibly do wherever we can is to do a bus route where that only the buses could drive on that. Thereby, if somebody takes the bus, they know that it's going to be reliable. It's probably going to get them there on time because they also have some conveniences that they can use, like the bus route.
Okay. Mr. Frederick, same question to you.
I for decades, travel up and down in East End, leave early in the morning to get to work. You get to work, you work all day, and you fight to get back home. You get back home late at night, enough time to feed the kids, put them to bed, and get a nap, and you start it all over next morning. And, you know, people in East End has been doing that forever. And East End and North Side, the traffic situation affects those two districts the worst because we use the road more than anyone else. But part of the problem we have is that everything's in Georgetown. You have to come to Georgetown for everything. My granddaughter cut her knee a couple of nights ago, and we had to bring her to Georgetown. So we left East End at 6 o'clock. Her father took her to the hospital. She got back home at midnight. I think that part of the solution, not the total solution, part of the solution is, first of all, we need to do a master transportation plan, not a master road plan, but a master transportation plan that looks at roads, public transport, and everything else that go along with it. In addition to that, I think we need to move some more services to the eastern districts, not necessarily East End, but to the eastern districts so that we don't have to go to Georgetown for everything. People don't have to go to Georgetown for work. They can, I mean, I would have been happy if I just had to go to Bodden Town to go to work in the morning, take me 15 minutes. So the whole traffic issue, I don't think you can get anybody to give up their cars because we don't have a comprehensive transportation system. So a master transportation plan need to be developed to address all of the issues related to traffic, not just new roads, not just public transportation, but includes everything.
Thank you. Mr. McLean, same question.
In most instances, every candidate in this election will be saying the same thing, especially those of us who are on the eastern side of the island. One of the things that I fought for many years ago as a minister was to restrict imports. That did not come across very well, I must tell you. The business community attacked me on that and would not accept that. Couple of things we need to do in this country. First thing is driver education. That's number one. Most people don't even know how to use roundabouts. And I'm going to tell you why. It's because we need to determine who is going to have the ability to drive private vehicles. There are certain demographics that we should not allow to own their own private vehicles. But in tandem with that, we need to develop a reliable public system and let them travel on that. One of the other things that I was trying for when we lost the election in 2009 was to create a large parking area in Georgetown, and we do a park and ride system where when you come in the morning, it may only cost you $1 a day to park your vehicle, and you have buses going to and fro all day long within 5 minutes of each other. That I believe I would pursue again. I would look at that possibility because the problem is the development, like Mccleary said, we have failed in developing this country because we did it so fast, in particular Georgetown. We did not provide sufficient parking to accommodate the occupants of the buildings, with them each one in one vehicle. So we need to provide the parking, satellite parking, and do bus and park and ride within Georgetown. There's no parking in Georgetown to accommodate the vehicles, and they get choked up in Georgetown.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Our next question, which we'll start with Mr. Frederick, relates to the cost of living, which I think a number of you have touched on already. Cost of living topped the Chamber's survey as the issue of most concern in this year's election. We're wondering what strategies would you propose to lower the cost of living for all residents?
If there was a magic potion to reduce the cost of living, and if it was that easy, I think we would have done it a long time ago. Cost of living is high for a number of reasons. We are a small community. I would venture to say that what is imported in this country for all of the grocery stores, Walmart probably purchases that for one of their stores. So you have a whole dynamic of supply and demand. Everything that comes in has to be shipped, has to be, it gets duties, then there's the profit margin. So it's a little bit of the market, the supply and demand. It also, if we reduce fees, like has been suggested, I don't think that any of the vendors will lower their prices, because then that just increases their profit margin. So it's a little bit of greed involved in it also. There are things that we can do individually to reduce the cost of living on ourselves. Spending better, saving better. We have this mentality in Cayman that if Arden is selling a burger and I come into the business and he's selling his for $5, I'll sell mine for 10. And then the persons that are buying it saying, well, Arden old burger must be not good. I'm going to go buy the $10 one. And that is the mentality that we have. We look for the most expensive cars to buy, when a Kia is all we need to get us up and down, but we go get a $100,000 car. So some of those traits that we have and some of the things that we do causes us to have this issue where it is so expensive for us to live. The other thing that I think we can do to try to offset the cost of living is to increase the minimum wage. Now, that will help the people at the bottom end to be able to live better. So I think one of the things that I would try to do when I'm elected right off is to try to increase the minimum wage. $6 an hour, there's nobody in this room that will go to work for $6 an hour.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick.
Thank you. Mr. Mclean, same question.
Let me start where Mccleary left off. It is time for us to look objectively on a minimum wage. Of course, we're going to say that simultaneously cost is going to go up. But he's right. No one in this room would want to work for $6 an hour. It was a gallant effort by the government of 2013 to 17 to establish a minimum wage, but we know how to gradually bring it up. And I believe over a 4-year period, we need to bring it up $1 a year or something like that, so it does not have that crash effect on the economy. That's one. Supply and demand, we need to be careful because everything is based on duties, and that's how the government runs the country. But here is one that needs to be addressed. Somehow we need to take control of our infrastructure, the commodities. And I'm talking about electricity, fuel, and the likes. Those are the telephone, those are the commodities, insurance, those are the commodities that is driving the cost of living up. On those essential ones of electricity, telephone, fuel, we tried. Originally my idea, but I didn't get it done. Then the next government got it done, developing a regulatory body, OFREG. That has been the biggest failure of any government because it has not worked. but we are not addressing it. That is where we can control some of the cost of living in this country. And until we do that, the ordinary person in the Eastern District, East End, North Side, it costs them an arm and a leg on a monthly basis to get into Georgetown in the absence of public transportation that they can ride on. And off-ride needs to be revamped and or shut down. One out of the two we need to do with it, but it needs to be done by the next government in its first 100 days.
Thank you, Mr. McLean.
Mr. Rankin.
The cost of living, fuel is a big, major contributor to the cost of living. You have utilities, you have telecoms, they all contribute to that. The fuel, when the fees that government add to the fuel, that gets added into the cost of every single item that we sell in this country. When CUC applies it to their utility bill, I mean, everybody gets a utility bill in here, they can see what the fuel rate is. But in order for us to reduce the cost of living, government must be prepared to make some concessions somewhere. But if they do, we also have to look on the other hand where they need to make back up those fees because we are a consumption-based society. But in order for us to ensure that the end consumer gets the benefit of whatever reduction government got, we have to ensure that there's a fair trade commission that can monitor that it's not just done at this level at the suppliers and it doesn't filter down to the consumers.
Thank you.
Well, at this time, we're going to take a short commercial break, courtesy of our sponsors. So please stay tuned. We'll be right back with the East End candidates in this year's election.
Behind everything we do is a promise. Better. Better because we care, because we all have a common goal, to be better at cooking, to be better at eating right, and taking care of ourselves, to live in a better community, to just feel better, today and tomorrow and the next day. Do it for you. Do it for them. Do it to prove something to yourself. Do it to carry on a family recipe. Or just because. But when you aim for the stars, better just works. We're Fosters. And we're better. Because of you, because of them, because of this place, and because we care.
Back to the Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forum. We've gone through the first 5 questions. We turn into the 6th question, which will focus on decentralizing service, and we turn it over to Colin.
Yes, and we'll start, Mr. McLean, with you on this one. Go East was a strategy introduced several years ago to decentralize services from Georgetown to the eastern districts. Would you support moving more government services and offices? If yes, which services?
I believe I started that when I was a minister by putting the licensing service up in Crew Road and trying to get one in Budden Town. I believe those are simple ones. I believe that the police department needs to be moved out of central Georgetown as well, because that creates a number of problems for us, because you don't have to be in the capital to police. And there are many other issues, like SEMA can go outside of Georgetown, maybe not as far as East End, but certainly outside of it, wherein the people in Georgetown can be driving out of Georgetown in the morning and whatnot. And I believe there are a number of other services, like the family services should have satellite offices in each district. There's no need for them to operate out of Georgetown. They can operate out of each individual district. NEU has proven that they can now go out to the districts and And I believe the pandemic has proven that government can operate without being in central Georgetown. And maybe it was a mistake to build that building as large as we did. We were planning at the time to split the site and put one up on spots, but that was derailed. But I believe that there are a number of services. NRA does not have to be in Georgetown. That is Public Works does not have to be in Georgetown. There is no need for them to be in Georgetown. Bring them out to the eastern districts, Baden Town breakers within that area, and then they can always travel in to do their work.
Thank you. Mr. Rankin, the same question to you.
Some of the offices I would support moving out is, for example, DOE or any other public authority that does not have to be in Georgetown. We always have our people have to go into town to do business. I gave a young lady a ride a few weeks ago, and she said, "Mr. Douglas, why do we have to go into town?" This is a young lady, she's about 23, 24, and that struck a chord with me. Why do we have to go in town to do business and do work? We have a lot of retired people there. They have to get to town to pay their water bill, to pay their light bill, to pay their phone bill. And they have to go down to do some banking. We need to be able to put other offices in the District of East End, and I hope that those would then provide other employment opportunities for people in East End as well. Some other offices that we know we need to move out that way, we can have some elements of the Port Authority move out that way. Why can't we put some of the other government offices, like some elements of customs out there that does not necessarily need to be high customer traffic. But we need to ensure that with the Go East Initiative, revise that plan and get not only government but other private sector companies to move some satellite offices. I would like it to be East End because that would provide some opportunities for us. But certainly anywhere that our people, especially our seniors, does not have to go too far because of, again, one, the public transportation system. Some of them don't drive, but they need to get access. They can get a ride from point A to point B, maybe Bordentown, Savannah, but we need to be able to move some of our services towards eastern districts.
Okay. Mr. Frederick?
Well, you mentioned the Go East initiative, and when I read that, that actually kind of focused more on tourism than it did general services. I think the moving core services out to the eastern district, not necessarily East End, because to make it easier for the eastern districts, Bordentown, Northside, and East End, to prevent them from having to come all the way to town, I think we need to move some of the services out. For example, Bordentown Clinic, I think should be expanded so that it's more of a small medical facility that can manage emergencies, small emergencies, and open 24/7 to be able to deal with any issues that come up in East End, Northside, and Bordentown. You know, with the Go East initiative, you know, we had a plan. However, the people of East End had other ideas of how they wanted East End to be developed. And this is where I get back to the development plan for East End, understanding what it is that we want and then developing strategies and how to get it. But there are core services that can be moved out of Georgetown, and we've had some examples of those. You know, I'm glad he mentioned the idea of moving some government services out to spots. I was actually part of that committee. And one of the things that we came up with was that we don't have the infrastructure to support it. There's more infrastructure in place now than it was then in the Savannah area, but the big drawback was that we just did not have the infrastructure to support it. You know, there are other government services that can be moved as a satellite office, not entirely, but as a satellite office that would not require the residents in that area, in those areas, to have to come to Georgetown. Licensing your vehicle, you don't have to come to Georgetown anymore. You go to Breakers, you get it done. Actually, people from Georgetown now tend to go to Breakers to get theirs done too because it's less traffic. So we have already seen the benefits of moving additional services outside of Georgetown. One that struck me
Thank you, Mr.
just a couple of days ago was the training center for public works. Why does it need to be public works? That could have been anywhere.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next question actually is a sort of a follow-on from the previous one, which was more focused on government. This one is more sort of linked in the same way as what proposals would you share to improve services, increase business, and improve the quality of life for people residing in East End? We'll start with Mr. Rankin on this one, and you did touch on some of these, but maybe if you want to add further to that.
Well, the proper development of a traffic plan, of traffic system, that will enhance the quality of life for some of our people. We have to increase business to the district again, using some elements of the Go East initiative. Yes, it was a tourism plan, but using some elements of that we can duplicate with other functions within the government and certainly within the private sector. We can ensure by encouraging them with incentives as well, ensure that they are able to bring business and their headquarters or satellite offices to the East End District. Again, it provides us opportunities to have jobs for our people. We can't continue to ask our people to go to Georgetown. We have to also look at what the development plan is for this country from a national level. And East End must be part of that. East End must be part of that solution. There are many developers who want to do business in East End. Again, because of the pushback they've gotten, or whatever reason, but we have to look at those and sit down and talk with those developers. Let them know what we want to see East End to be, right? Let them know what we would like to see in East End and how will their development help us bring jobs and help for our families.
Thank you. Mr. Frederick?
Well, let's start with infrastructure. Most business these days use internet and those type of services. Everything is electronic. The further east you go, the worse it gets. This comes back to, again, building infrastructure. The District of East End, if you look at the demographics, there's just over 750 registered voters. And out of those 750 registered voters, about 20% is either listed as retired or unemployed. There's about 13% of those registered that is unemployed. Yes, 13%. Out of the total population, it's about 1,400 persons. That works out to about 3.7%. National average is 3.5%, I think, unemployment rate. But the largest sector that we have in East End is retired persons. And, you know, Mr. McLean was talking about the issues with the elderly and having provisions in place for the elderly. And that, at the rate that our population is aging in East End, that is a serious concern that we need to address because we're all inching closer to that group. You know, I tried to get services, and we were talking about cost of living, and for some reason, people see East End as being so far to go. If you try to get a service done where you get it in Georgetown, we're actually paying more because they're charging us to go to East End because it's so far to go. And that is a lot of what you hear from people that are not from East End. So to encourage the businesses to give up where they are in Georgetown, where they have all of the resources that they need, is convenient to move out to East End, I think is difficult. We have to start with smaller scale stuff, sort of like what they did in Savannah with that whole development around the gas station and stuff. I mean,
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick.
so smaller businesses out to East End as a start, and then we build on it.
Thank you. Mr. McLean?
The age of technology is upon us. And any business that wants to move from the central hub of that technology requires that technology to be expanded there. I come back to off-reg, a waste of time. the people of East End, and for that matter, Town and North Side, we can't even get the fiber optics to run our televisions, much less to run businesses. It is about us making sure whatever development goes into those districts, that it's sustainable. It concerns the environment. We need to make sure, but we need to encourage development in those districts. And Mr. Rankin said that people were getting pushed back. I don't know if that was directed at me, but I encourage development, but I am not encouraging digging in holes of quarries or docks in East End, which is going to destroy the water lens. So if that is basically my position on that. There's not one business that wanted to come to East End in the last 20 years that I did not lobby and write to get through letters and otherwise to get concessions for them. Some of them got 100% concessions because of me to bring small businesses in East End. Bed and breakfast, the whatnot and whatnot. But I believe that we need to increase the business opportunities up there. But because the population is so small, it is very few businesses that wants to move to the eastern districts because of the bottom line, the demographics. It does not. It's not very attractive for them. But we need to encourage them through concessions. Everybody else can get concessions, and we need to ensure that those coming that way get concessions as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Next question is about education, and we'll start with Mr. Frederick on this one. Education is crucial to the success of the youth and our future. There is an increasing divergence between the quality of education between the public and private schools. What measures would you support to correct this imbalance?
As I mentioned earlier, one of the issues with education, I think, is that we keep changing the goalposts. We keep changing the structure. And I think we need to sit down, determine what our education policies are going to be, and we stick with it and we work it through. Yeah, there will be problems, but we have to work the problems out. You don't just throw out everything and start over. And I think because we have been doing that over the years, the students are the ones that are actually falling through the cracks. Our education is it relies on teachers from all over the world, basically, to come in and teach our kids. And I don't think that they're given enough opportunity to learn and understand the children or the system. And I know that happens in other areas as well. But, if we bring a teacher in from another country, the best that they can do is teach what they already know, which might not be what we're doing. They have to catch up. They have to learn. So they're learning along with the students. And I'm not blaming the teachers. Mr. Mclean started a learning center in East End many years ago. And it stayed locked up for about a year. And I called him one day and said, "Where's the key? I'm going to open it up." He said, "The key's in the office." I went and I got it. I intended to do it one night a week to give the kids in the community an opportunity to come in to use the computers that we had so they could do their homework and so on. It ended up, I had to open it every night of the week except Friday night. And if I didn't show up by 7 o'clock, they were at my house waiting for me to come so that they could go use the computer and I could help them with their homework. We tried to get assistance with that. I had several people come by and look and saw what we were doing and said, "You can come help." Nope. And I did that until Ivan destroyed it in 2004.
Thank you.
If it had been built back, I would do it again because the kids need more assistance out of school to help them.
Thank you. Mr. McLean?
I couldn't get that bill back. I couldn't pay for it the second time. Government wouldn't. I believe that we tend to put a lot of responsibility on the schools in this country, but we also need to get that balance of parental involvement in our schools. We have we're lacking in that. There is no evidence available anywhere in the world or in this country to say that the kids in East End are not as smart as those in Georgetown or West Bay. Okay? There is no evidence to suggest that. It is the system we have. We are taking the responsibility of teaching children from the teachers and putting it into a technocrat hand. And that needs to stop. We need the devolution of education must be down to the schools and by extension the communities. Maybe you have a committee of people in the districts that will volunteer on boards to assist with it. And teachers will then be held accountable. But we need to ensure we cannot. It's impossible for me to understand why a country so sophisticated and is valued so much, and we don't pay more attention to the actual education of our children so that their boat can rise with the same tide that everybody else rise with. Of course we have to. Mm-hmm. We're just throwing money at things that is useless. And education up between the private sector and the government sector, who says that the kids in private sector is smarter? Private schools are smarter. It's not that. It's more focus, it's more attention being paid to those kids. We are not paying attention to our kids.
Thank you.
We need our teachers, we need the education staff to go out and get those teachers. Our truant officer hardly ever comes into the district when one child is not at school. Is that how we should be running this country?
Thank you, Mr. McLean.
Okay. Mr. Rankin, same question to you.
The education budget that we have for this country keeps going up every year. And I feel that we do not have to input any more money in education. What we need to do is use those resources properly. We've seen recently the high cost of education of one student in the government school, which is the highest anywhere, pretty much the highest anywhere in the world, is in the top 5 certainly. We need to get good teachers who are dedicated to teaching our kids. Back when I was in high school, we had the government schools are much better than the private schools, then hands down. But when they changed the not too sure if it was the law, but when they changed that the expat students had to go to private schools, then we started to see a degradation of our education because we then no longer mixed in and making our schools competitive with everyone else that was there. We also have to identify kids from an early age, very early age, the kids who are going to be going into the professional direction and the kids who are going to be going into the vocational direction. And we can do that. We have enough experience and experts on the island that we can identify our kids from primary school age and then start developing programs that will assist them so that they do not fall through the cracks. The results that we get on our education exams every year, they seem to be rising. But when you look at the education reports of how the different schools, that keeps going down. That tells you something is significantly wrong with what we're doing to our kids, right? The education system must also be in partnership, as I said previously, with the social aspects and the parents. We cannot absolve the parents of their responsibility to ensure that the kids get the best education they get. They are partners in this too, not just the government. And I certainly will support a school board, especially for East End.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question refocuses onto tourism and the border reopening. And Mr. McLean, this one will be addressed to you first. So if elected, would you support reopening our borders to overnight visitors beginning in May and reducing the time for quarantine once the number of persons vaccinated in our community reaches the percentage level set by the Public Health Department?
Well, I don't even know what that that level is, because one minute I'm hearing that the herd immunity must be 90% of the population, the next minute I'm hearing it's 70%. Mike, I can't give you a definitive answer as to whether I would do it in May, but certainly, like when I started first here tonight, we need to look at it. We need to take advice from the experts. We know that our visitor base is from North America, Canada and America, and specifically through Florida. And they're not doing very well at this time. And then we have the Europeans as well, who are not doing very well. We really need, just today, 600 people in quarantine, just over 600 now in quarantine, and there were 9 positives. That does not send a message that I like. I believe that we need to review it, Mike. I would like to possibly sit down with all concerned and see what's happening with America. They seem to be plateauing now. But we really need to review it from a perspective of how the vaccine is working. And by the way, I should encourage everybody to go and get this vaccine now too, because that's the only way we're going. There is a possibility of us not being able to open, and the possibility of us opening is predicated on whether or not we get this vaccine. So I would encourage everyone to do that, but I can't give you a definitive answer as to when I would support the opening of the border. It depends on the situation at the time.
Understood. Thank you. Mr. Rankin, same question.
We need to reopen, but we must reopen safely, and it must be a phased approach. And it must be within tourism industrial leaders as well. They have to play a big part in this. One of our pillars of our economy, tourism, is non-existent at this point. Cayman is more fortunate than every other one of the countries in the Caribbean, including our neighbor, Jamaica, who is now seeing a significant increase in their COVID cases. The government thus far has done a fantastic job with managing the COVID. They listened to science and they listened to the experts they had here. We are in a privileged position because we've since had element of the finance sector who has been able to support us thus far. But we need to have a phased approach to this reopening. We need to get our people vaccinated before we can even go down that road. And certainly we need to look at how we can do a measured approach using Cayman Airways only in certain cities in the USA, Miami, New York, for example, and start by saying maybe bringing only adults, because we know that kids are not being vaccinated at this point. So we need to make a phased approach and ensure that we get more of our people, a higher percentage of our people vaccinated in order to be able to get to that stage where we can say, yes, we're going to reopen. Is the vaccine the silver bullet or the magic pill? No, because there's so many other variants of COVID now out there that we're not sure if this vaccine is even going to take care of. But we must be willing to make some decisions very soon, because if we don't, what's going to happen to our economy even much further?
Thank you. Mr. Frederick.
Well, being a former director of disaster hazard management, I can't give you a definitive date. I wouldn't even venture to do that, because with any disaster emergency, it evolves, and you never know sometimes where it's going to go. You can plan for it, you can and try to mitigate some of the effects of it, but you can't definitively say. And I think this is part of the problem why the date keeps rolling, because the situation keeps changing. I agree that we need to get the tourism sector open up. I mean, it's a big part of our economy, but we need to do it safely. Whether or not that means reducing the quarantine to 5 days or 10 days or whatever, that would have to be determined by the experts. And we use science to determine whether or not something like that is possible. And we plan for it. and we put whatever systems we need to put in place to be able to manage reopening of the country back to tourism. The whole issue of the vaccination, you know, we're doing as much as we can, and I've been there and I understand the efforts that have to go into trying to get the community to go in a certain direction. And these are some of the things that we discussed when we were actually writing the pandemic plan for flu pandemic. How do we address those? How do we get people back to work? How do we address the issues that come up? What happens to the economy? How do we get the economy going again? And I think that we have to be sensible about it. We've done well so far in that we're not here wearing masks tonight. And I wouldn't want us to get back to the point where we're locked down again. We can't go anywhere. We have to wear masks everywhere. So I think a phased, sensible, scientific approach to reopening is what we need to look at. And it has to involve everybody, government, private, public sector, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rankin, this question will start with you regarding the environment. Some of the largest tracts of undeveloped land are situated in East End and North Side. What are your views about the future development of East End? Yeah, sure. Some of the largest tracts of undeveloped land are situated in East End and North Side. What are your views about the future development of East End?
My views on the future development of East End must be in conjunction with the people in East End. They must have a say what goes on in the district. One of my plans is to, once I'm elected, is to make up a committee of rounded people across the district, and we sit down and do a district development plan that we can share with the government. We can't just go developing willy-nilly. We have some 7-story buildings in East End already, but we need obviously to do some development, but we must protect our environment as well. We have to look at the zoning as zoning. We want business to come to East End, but just not any place. All right? We have to ensure that the zoning is that we do for the district is for what is going to be built there. Residential zoning should be mixed with commercial zoning as far as I'm concerned. Sometimes you can't have it, but you shouldn't be mixed with commercial zoning. But certainly we must protect our culture. We must protect the development of those large tracts of land and encourage developers to put stuff aside. If we can't do anything else other than develop it, they must also play a part in how we develop our district that's conducive to the people of East End.
Thank you. Mr. Frederick?
Well, this comes back to what I was mentioned earlier about a 10-year development plan for the district. We can't rely solely on our physical development plan or the development plan that's used by planning. I mean, that's outdated. It should be reviewed every 5 years. It's now 2021. We're still using 1997 development plan. But in order to be informed, the people of the district, in order to inform government of how they want the district to develop, they have to decide and get together and say, and this is where, if we had a district council, it would be very effective and efficient in doing some of this work to determine where we want neighborhood commercial, where we want hotel tourism, how do we want to develop, how many stories do we want, because I've been here and they want to go 100 stories and 50 stories and 20 stories, and, you know, what are we developing, where are we developing, why are we developing, who are we developing for? It doesn't make any sense for us to develop East End and then have to bring people in to do the work, which is what we're doing nationally. I mean, we have a population of 6 to 5 or so thousand people. 53% is Caymanians. The unemployment rate is 3%. I don't think we have an issue with job creation. I think we have an issue with job allocation. If we can't find in the job market space for 3.5% of our population or Cayman population, then I think we have an issue. So East End, the development of East End and the future of East End, yeah, we have a lot of land. A lot of the land is being farmed. We can't just bulldoze down everything. And we have to be cognizant of the environment. I mean, a lot of our tourism is built on around the environment. So if you destroy it, like say you take Paradise and built the parking lot, so we have to be careful about how we develop, and we need to plan for our development to be able to inform government how we want the district to develop.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick.
Mr. McLean?
Thank you. In 2018, I was excited that we were at last going to get a review of the development plan. And all of a sudden, this government, this incompetent government, decided they were going to put it in West Bay, along West Bay Beach only as a trial. Therefore, the people in the rest of the country were deprived of making contributions to the development plan. And then it just fell off into the abyss. Yes, East End and North Side. That's a lot of undeveloped land. And that is, as we see it, those of us who come from Georgetown, that it's undeveloped. It's really not undeveloped. 60 to 80% of the agriculture product in this country that we sell in Georgetown comes from East and North Side, the eastern end of this country. That is produce, cattle rearing, rearing of animals and whatnot. And so it is not undeveloped. It is being used to support this country. But certainly the Vision 2008, which was dropped by the wayside, maybe I have some responsibility for that too, because I was in cabinet 2005 to 2008. 2009. So I had some responsibility for dropping that as well. But the development on the eastern end, and in particular in the East End, needs to be sustainable. We need to look at the environment. One of the things that the people of East End has done over the years is that they have preserved. They have really preserved that. Most people in this country don't even go inside of East End into the interior. And I believe more people needs to do that, to see what the value that district has to this country when it comes to produce and livestock. And it's significant. And I believe that that's why I stopped Joe Imperato from digging that port in East End, because it was going to destroy our freshwater lands.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. So we've gone through 10 questions in the first round. Those are chamber questions. The next series of questions will come from the public. But before we turn to those questions, we're going to take a short break to thank our sponsors. So please stay tuned.
Behind everything we do is a promise. Better. Better because we care. Because we all have a common goal, to be better at cooking, to be better at eating right, and taking care of ourselves, to live in a better community, to just feel better. Today and tomorrow and the next day. Do it for you. Do it for them. Do it to prove something to yourself. Do it to carry on a family recipe. Or just because. But when you aim for the stars, better just works. We're Fosters. And we're better. Because of you, because of them, because of this place. And because we care.
Back to the Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forum for the District of East End. So we now turn to the public questions, and we'll begin with a question about health insurance costs, and I'll turn it over to Chamber President Mike Gibbs.
Thank you, Will. This question, as I submitted through our recent online survey. Question is, health insurance premiums continue to increase annually for many businesses and especially for persons who reach retirement age. What improvements, if any, would you propose to make health insurance more affordable for businesses and retirees? This question will go to Mccleary, Mr. Frederick first.
I have friends in insurance, and I've experienced this just recently trying to get insurance. We have to, first of all, take away the ability from the insurance companies to cherry pick, as I call it. They seem like they will only insure healthy people, or people that have no issues whatsoever. And then for whatever minor issue or other issues that you have, if you do manage to get the insurance, it's at a premium. So I think the first thing we need to do is to remove the ability for them to cherry pick. Government can't insure everybody. I know right now there's a large sector of the country that's being insured through Cynical. We cannot rely on government to do everything. And the private sector while government is picking up the slack for the indigent, which is a huge cost in insurance, and for other people that the other insurance companies are turning away, they're making a profit by being able to cherry pick and pick who they want to insure. And that ability, I think, needs to go away. We need to better manage through the regulatory agencies, the businesses that are selling insurance, and not just health insurance, but all insurance, house insurance, car insurance, life insurance. Again, they have this method where they cherry pick who they want to insure, which then leaves a large sector of our population uninsured. I think something like 21% of our population does not have any insurance, which will fall to government as an expense. And, we need to do better. If we have a law saying that you have to provide insurance, you need insurance, then there should be some mechanism in place to require the insurance companies to provide insurance to people that are seeking it.
Thank you. Mr. McLean.
It has always amazed me how come 60,000 people and you got 9 insurance companies. That has always amazed me. There has to be some value in that. Why so many people have these insurance companies. We need to review our insurance law. We need to get to the point where we have universal health insurance, where one size fits all. The businesses are having difficulty doing it, providing for their employees, but also some businesses are not paying the insurance too, taking it out of their employees' pay and still not paying their insurance. But be that as it may, that is a criminal offense that needs to be prosecuted to the extent of the law. We have past legislators and current legislators. We should have done something about it a long time ago. But this government has done nothing for 8 years. And they have admitted that they didn't do anything about the insurance law in this country. It provides that these insurances can cherry pick, because we have made it easy for them to cherry pick by law. Really, the insurance law allows them to rid themselves or jettison those who come of age, and then government pick it up. Once they have been turned down by 2 insurances, then they can't get insurance. When do you think you need insurance? It's not when you're young. My 28-year-old son does not need insurance now. He never gets sick. I'll soon be needing it. and those of us who are in that, getting into that age bracket, that's the not when we, but when you have universal coverage, what happens is that the young ones covers for the older ones, and eventually they'll get old, but the country doesn't stop. It goes in perpetuity, so younger ones will be coming up. And that's what we need. And we need to bite the bullet. We need to make these tough decisions.
Thank
They're
you,
going to be
Mr.
tough, but they're going to be in the best interest of this country and its people.
Thank you. Mr. Rankin, your comments.
The health insurance is a significant cost to businesses, but it's also an area of our economy that we need to have a revision of. I touched on it earlier when I said that how the younger people pays for the older people, but when they get young, then it falls on cynical. During those younger years, cynical don't get the benefit of getting insurance premiums from those people who are not claiming benefits. They don't, right? So we need to have a revision of our healthcare system, and that may mean going to a single-payer system. It may mean a national health insurance system, but we must be able to recognize that this is not working for us. It's too costly for our employees. It's too costly for retirees. I mean, when somebody is on a private insurance, health insurance scheme, they no longer, when they retire, and I think in the private sector, it's 60 years. At 60 years, they now have to go and pay insurance. And it's literally probably double for them. They're now just living on a retirement pension salary. And that health insurance cost is probably going to eat up all of that. We need to be able to take care of our seniors, need to be able to take care of our elders, and Cineco has gotten the burden of those expenses. And we can't continue to burden Cineco with that kind of expense. We must be able to have a national health insurance scheme that will take care of everybody who is required by law to have health insurance.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. McLean, we'll start with you, and this question is about affordable housing.
Again,
The Cayman Islands has one of the world's highest GDPs per capita, but the Caymanian dream of purchasing or building a home seems to be slipping away. What strategies would you support or propose to ensure that there's affordable housing for residents?
maybe you should, that question should be if I have done so. Maybe Easton has had a streak of good luck in that when I was in cabinet, I bought land in Easton that I was highly criticized about because I took the money from repairing the roads to buy 9 acres of property for affordable homes. We built 12 during the UDP government. And in the last 4 years, we built 6 more, plus 12 are current under construction. And that's because of me and me alone, pushing the board to do that for the people of Easton. Now, there may be a certain level of affordable homes that people would say is below that. But I believe that what government needs to do is to build multi-dwelling compounds or areas where people can get to have reasonable living conditions. I have always recommended that what we do is use a different method than how we have been doing. I know we have the GG Ham and we have the bill on your own and bill on your own land and whatnot. But that is not sufficient as well. We need to bring down the cost of building properties, affordable homes, by at least $25,000. And I believe we can do that by ordering our own material through the suppliers here. And using different ways of getting carpenters and contractors to be working on a wage basis as opposed to a contractors basis.
Thank you.
Everybody needs to contribute to the development of affordable homes.
Thank you. Mr. Rankin?
Affordable. To most people, I'm going to use East End, most people in East End, most of the people who work in East End, a $350,000 home is not affordable to them. Even a $250,000 home is kind of out of their reach, right? And it goes back to show, in somewhat, I guess, economies of scale. But what we have done over the last several administrations is that we've given developers big concessions. They're getting the benefits of this country, they must put back into this country. They must be able to contribute to building homes that are really affordable for people in East End. We look at different avenues for them, the financing from the banks, financing through government guarantees. And even then, some people still cannot qualify for it because it's not affordable to them. We have to make it true affordable homes, true affordable housing, and we must put mechanisms in place that the big developers who are reaping the benefits from this country are able to contribute because of the concessions and stuff that the government is granting them and not enabling them, that they must demand that they put back into this country.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Frederick?
Affordable housing is a national issue, not just East End. It's a national issue. And, you know, younger Caymanians at the bottom level or just starting out cannot afford housing today, their own home. I was thinking about this a couple of months ago after I was talking to a young guy that was lamenting about not being able to qualify for a loan because of his salary. And I did some numbers. So if you get a 1,300 square foot house, which is a small, affordable house, and at the lower end of $274,000, he would need a down payment of $54,000 to start off with. He need 20%. Where you can get that? You can't save it based on the salary that he's currently getting. The loan amount is going to be $242,000. If you spread that over 30 years at a low interest rate of 3.3%, which now is 5 point something, I think it is, he would have to pay $970 a month. Now, if you're working and you're making $2,000 a month and you have to pay high utility bills, water bill, living in East End, got to spend extra in gas to get to Georgetown, your food, your kids, you can't afford it. And then when you look at the banks and the ratio that they have set in order for you to qualify, it's virtually impossible for a young Caymanian just starting out or that is in the lower end of the employment pool to be able to qualify for any low-income housing. Now, I have worked with some people in trying to get Frank Hall homes, and I like the way that they were working with people to try to get them to qualify for the loans. And I think they were doing a good job, and you can see by the number of homes that have been built by Frank Hall and the number of homes that have been occupied by young Caymanians. But it is very difficult. We're talking about the cost of living. The cost of living is high, and everything is expensive. Labor is expensive. Everybody wants to make a profit because the cost of living is high, so they have to charge more to be able to make their living, so it costs you more. Everything is imported. Pretty much everything in the building industry is imported. Flowers make blocks, but he has to bring in cement. So everything is imported.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick.
Thank you. Our next question actually goes back in the tourism area. I'd be interested, starting with Mr. Rankin, your views on the future of the cruise industry in the Cayman Islands.
Right now, we have no cruise industry, and I don't see that happening again for another year. The government has made a statement to that effect, I believe, but certainly I also believe that we should not be rushing to get back into establishing a cruise industry, especially right now during this pandemic. We saw how the cruise industry contribute to the spread of COVID-19, right? We heard the many horror stories of ships had to be anchored at sea because the whole crew and the passengers were infected. I don't think we should take that kind of chance. I'm more liable to advocate for overnight tourism versus cruise cruise tourism at this point. But it is certainly not, and not anything that I would advocate that we must move back into that, because I don't think that is safe at this point because of the current pandemic and all the other different variations of COVID that's out there. We don't want to risk all the people here who are as seniors or anybody who's at risk.
Thank you. Mr. Frederick.
The nature of cruise industry is that you're in a confined space. A lot of people in a small space, and it kind of acts like a petri dish for the spread of any disease, whether it's COVID-19 or anything else. Where we have gotten so far, I don't think that we should jeopardize our status as being relatively COVID-free by allowing cruise ships to come in at this time. I don't think that they have an answer to how they would deal with managing their customers on the ship to reduce the spread of COVID-19. I haven't heard any viable plans or determinations of how they would do that. I know that overall the tourism industry is important to us, but so is the rest of the economy, and the people of the Cayman Islands is most important. And until they have developed a system to manage the customers on cruise ships and to be able to safely guarantee that the spread of COVID-19 has been addressed and won't be an issue, I don't think that we should rush into opening back up tourism to cruise industry. I think we need to get back to opening up the overnight stay, but not right now. I think we should just lay low when it comes to the cruise industry.
Thank you. Mr. McLean.
I read that question to say the future of tourism and of cruise industry in the Cayman Islands, and I may have a little different position. And I should put mine in two phases. In the short term, I see cruise industry as not being up and running, or anyone coming to this country through cruise tourism. However, I believe that the future for cruise tourism and the Cayman Islands can be bright. However, I want it to remain unique, that the Cayman Islands is unique. We, instead of rushing out there to build another dock or to propose building another dock and upset the whole apple cart, and our people are conservationists, what we need to do is to develop our launch system, or the launch from the boat system. Let us be unique. We have always been, haven't we? But I think the future for cruise industry in the Cayman Islands in the longer term, I believe is alive and well. But I also support the overnight tourism, long-term tourism, long-stay tourism, because that is our bread and butter. That's really our bread and butter. When the little restaurants down the road are up in East End, and we got all those local restaurants in East End, and these people are touring, that's our bread and butter. And that's where we need to put some serious concentrations on, and then let the cruise industry find its way back in over the long term.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Frederick, we'll start with you. What are your views on the recently enacted Civil Partnership Act?
Judge not lest ye be judged. The issues surrounding that is not unique to the Cayman Islands. Those issues been going on since Sodom and Gomorrah. And being a Christian, I don't have to agree with what they're doing, but I don't have the right to condemn anybody. You have free will to make your own choice to do whatever you want to do. I don't have to get involved in it. And while I don't agree, I am not going to condemn them, because just like how you're free to go and drink alcohol, or you're free to go and do drugs, or free to go do whatever you want to do, God gave us all the choice to choose. If you believe in good and evil, you have to accept that there's going to be good and there's going to be evil. And for every good thing, I think that there's a counterfeit and there's an evil. I believe that we have a God who is in control of everything. And I also believe that there's evil in this world. And everything that you can think of that has been put as an institution, whether it's the family or marriage or you name it, there's a counterfeit to it. There's the opposite. We have a biblical family structure, and then we have the modern structure, modern day family. So God gave us the ability to make our own choices. At the end of the day, you're going to have to account for whatever choice that you made. So it's not on me to condemn anyone, but to try to show them what is right, what is wrong, and let them make their own choices. I believe that we should ensure that everyone is treated fairly, but I don't think that, this is my personal view, I don't think that we should go overboard to accommodate any group or any sector.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick.
So for the rest of us, who's protecting us?
Thank you. Mr. McLean?
Let me preface this by saying I couldn't care less what anyone does in their private life. That's not my job to come out and determine what your life is going to be. I don't want anyone interfering with mine. So, having said that, and I need to clear the air here because of my opposition to that partnership, Civil Partnership Act. My opposition to the Civil Partnership Act was the method in which it was done. You cannot carve out a particular law for a particular demographic and then don't do it for the others, which is a heterosexual. Why don't we have a law for heterosexuals as well? We don't. We have different laws that they are governed by. It was simple. And I said this not only to the Premier, but to the Governor as well, and all my colleagues in the Legislative Assembly. We could have changed every law in this country to recognize same-sex partners. We did it for common law. In 2012, 12 I believe, or 13, we changed the insurance law. And it says because we were having difficulty with children getting insured from that were not part of a marriage. And we changed the law to say, if you can prove that you have been in a common law marriage for 5 years or more, your children will automatically get comply as a family to get insurance. That was my concern. Why do we have to carve out a particular law to satisfy a particular demographic? It wasn't done for me, and it wasn't done for anyone else, or the heterosexual society. And I said it was wrong, and I fought against it on those grounds.
Thank you, Mr. McLean.
Mr. Rankin?
I know this has been a very divisive issue in our. It is not a lifestyle I support, but I am not going to go cry on anybody who does that as well. I have no intention of trying to legislate somebody in their bedroom. People of same-sex orientations, whatever you want to call it, has been around this country for years, right? It's nothing new to us, but certainly it's not a lifestyle I support, but I'm not going to go cry down on anybody. However, where we find ourselves here today is the inability of our legislators to sit down and talk and try to hash out something when this was going around. When the judge, the Chief Justice made that ruling, I wrote a letter establishing my position to all of the ministers in East End, right? Then it came back and was thrust back into the hands of the legislators. After having a read through of the civil partnership bill, it was more than just speaking about same-sex marriages. It spoke about some common law elements in there as well too, and some protection for them. But the majority of the attention was put on same-sex marriages and what they were going to call it, and civil partnership, and the fear that England was going to come down and just establish it, which is technically what happened now, because that's what the governor did. I don't agree that that was the right way to do it, and certainly I won't be judging anybody for their sexual orientation.
Thank you.
Next question focuses back on population growth. We keep hearing about increasing the population, or the population increasing up to a number of 100,000 and further development. So what measures would you recommend so that Caymanians benefit from that, such a growing economy? Mr. Mclean, would start with you on that one.
We keep hearing about increasing population, 100 and further development. First of all, let me say no immediately to increasing our population artificially up to 100,000 people. That must be a natural process. Right now, I believe if United Nations says you have to be 2.1 or something population birth rate to have the required population growth that you need, and we're below that. And I appreciate that we're below that. But why are we doing this? Along comes with any artificial increase of any population. If you dump a million people in the middle of China, it's going to cause problems. Despite them being 3 billion people, why do we want to do this? So the second question is null and void. We do not need to increase our population up to 100,000. That is for special interests who feels like their explosion of their businesses will benefit as a result of higher population. And I'm not supporting that. So I'm not even answering the second part of it.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Rankin?
You want to hear about an infrastructure nightmare?
Hey man, you benefit from that.
It's a difficult question to answer. It really is. But certainly, it would have to be thought about. We'd have to train our Caymanians. We have to develop their educational needs to match. But do we really want to go down there? I mean, who are we going to grow that for? Caymanians? How are we going to profit from that? How are we going to benefit from that? And until I can see some empirical data, empirical evidence that Caymanians would benefit from that, I wouldn't support that at all.
Okay. Thank you.
The national growth rate is about 3%. And I'm talking about the birth rate. At that rate, it'll take us a while to reach 100,000. So to reach 100,000 population, we have to artificially inflate and increase the population. The question is, who's that going to benefit? If we do that, we're already almost a minority in our country. If we did that, we would definitely become a minority in the country, because at 64,000, 65,000 population right now, we're only 53%. So with all the talk about increasing population, and I know that there are some theories around increasing population to increase government revenues and so on and so on. But you also increase in expenditure because you need infrastructure, you need hospitals, you need schools, you need everything else to be able to support that 100,000. And whatever the goal of the population is, we still need to plan for it. We still need to put the infrastructure in place, even for our 3% growth rate. Because if we don't do that, things are not going to get better. It's just going to get worse. And, you know, this might sound funny coming from somebody that worked in the planning department, but my question is, who are we developing for? Are we developing for the Caymanians or the investors? Who are we developing for? Because right now, what is being developed, the Caymanians can't afford.
Thank you.
Okay. Next question is about the future of financial services. So given that financial services is critical to the island's economy, if elected, how would you respond to the FATF grey listing and the European Union's intention to blacklist us, even though we have met most of their requirements? And we'll start with Mr. Rankin.
Financial services represents a significant portion of our GDP. And that, in a sense, is a huge accomplishment, seeing where we started, you know, seafarers. But we must, whatever we do, we must fiercely protect it. We must. We don't have anything to stand on right now except financial services. Our tourism industry is stagnant at this point. We must use technology. We must be able to have people advocate on our behalf at some of these NGOs. We must, because they're the ones who are, at every time they move the goalposts and we meet those requirements that they're asking us to meet, then they move it again. And we must have people advocating on our behalf. We need to educate our people on how important that is to us as well. We must educate our people. When we have those people going after our financial service industry, the NGOs, the FATF, and all those other organizations, it hurts us because they willfully tell untruths about us, right? I think Cayman has a very excellent financial regime reporting mechanism as well. And we must do what we can, and we must ensure that we fight as fierce as we can and do not allow them to overrun us or destroy our industry.
Thank you. Mr. Frederick?
I think most of the attacks on us from the FATS or the EU is born from jealousy, actually. I think it's hard for them to accept that a small little country like us, with no natural resources, out in the middle of the ocean, 65,000 people can have such control and such influence on the finances around the world. And they have not been able to do that. And I think that, you know, no matter what we do, no matter what goalpost they set for us and we've met, they're going to continue to shift it because it's my opinion that they're attempting to bring us down. They can't accept that a little country like ours can be so successful. And I think it's a case of envy. And they have the power and the authority because we don't have anybody to stand up for us. So they have the power and authority. We can't depend on the UK because they attack us just as much as the rest when it comes to finances. So we're having to jump hoops, do limbo, whatever they put in front of us to keep ourselves relevant. And they will continue to come at us as long as our financial industry is successful. The minute it collapses, they will go away. And I think that is the goal for these people putting these things in place on us and putting us on blacklists and gray lists and so on and so on. Because a lot of the things that we do, they're not doing themselves.
Thank you. Mr. McLean?
Dealing with the EU and FATF must come from a multi-pronged approach. We need to utilize Cayman Finance better. We need to put more money into Cayman Finance, and you know, you all know I'm going to put my position forward as I see it. I believe that there needs to be closer cooperation and working relationship between Cayman Finance and the government. Government needs to put in its share of resources, and what has happened here is that these European countries in particular, they have made a total mess of their social economy, and now they are looking money. And they think it's here. It's not here. It's still where it was. We are merely managing people's money. That's all we are doing. And they think that they are going to pressure us into giving up money, but we don't have any money for anyone. Not for the Europeans, not for anyone. It's not here. We only manage people's money. That's all we do. And 90% of this is born out of ignorance on the part of the legislators in the EU and the regulators in FATF. That is what is happening. We need, this country needs to put a plan together to enlighten the population in the EU. Those 36 countries now they are. It used to be 37. England is gone. 36 countries. And England needs to support us in all those efforts. We need to ensure that we use lobby groups to enlighten us. We need to get to the papers. We need to get on television. And we can only do that through drawing on the expertise within this community, because there are many, and using Cayman Finance for us to be able to get up there and deal with this matter.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. And that's the final question for this evening. I'd like to thank the candidates. We had 16 questions in all, and you did a great job. Thank you very much. We're going to take a short commercial break and thank our sponsors again. And we'll be right back with closing statements from each of the candidates.
Behind everything we do is a promise. Better. Better because we care, because we all have a common goal: to be better at cooking, to be better at eating right and taking care of ourselves, to live in a better community, to just feel better. Today and tomorrow and the next day. Do it for you. Do it for them. Do it to prove something to yourself. Do it to carry on a family recipe. Or just because. But when you aim for the stars, better just works. We're Fosters. And we're better. Because of you, because of them, because of this place. And because we care.
Welcome back to the Chamber of Commerce Candidates Forum for East End. We've reached the stage in this evening where we are going to hear from each of the candidates and their closing remarks. And we'll begin as the candidates were seated, and we'll begin with Mr. Rankin.
In my closing remarks, I want to highlight that it is my intention to put East End first. We must always, as an elected member, when I'm elected, I would put East End first. We have a lot of issues that we touched on this evening. A lot of those were national issues. A lot that were also local to East End as well. But this is going to be, whoever is elected, along with myself, is going to have the difficult task of dealing with these issues on a number of fronts. We must be able to do well for our community. We must be able to do well nationally, But we must also remember where we will be elected. We are elected for me in East End. I will put East End first, and I promise the people that give me the opportunity to do this job, and I will put their interests and business at heart and make East End first.
I would like to say to the people of East End, it is your right to vote for who you think is the best candidate to represent you in Parliament. Nobody can take it away from you, and nobody should buy it from you. It's your right. It is more valuable to you than a few dollars. It's your life. So I want you to think carefully when you come to vote on election day and vote for the person, whoever that is, that you want to vote for to be your representative. I got into this because I think I can be of service, and I think we need more service than politics nowadays. There's too much politics, and we need service. I know some of the issues with cost of living is on everybody's mind. Like I said, there's no magic bullet for cost of living. There are things that we can do individually to help lower our cost of living. Some of the things that we can't control, I mean, if you look in some countries, governments have kept control of utilities and other important infrastructure to help lower the cost of living for their residents. We gave that up a long time ago, and there's no getting it back. We have the reality of a high cost of living. We also have the reality that for most people, what you get paid is more than what you would get in any other country. We have to use that wisely. Cost of living is not going to go down overnight, and like I said earlier, if it could have been done, they would have done it a long, long time ago because it affects everybody. So come April 14th, when you go to the polls, there's 3 names on the ballots. It's only you, God, the pencil, and the paper. And that decision is yours only. You make the choice for who you would want to represent you. If you're not represented properly and efficiently and effectively at the national level, well, you're not going to get any assistance in the community. If we don't take care of things at the national level, we can't help the communities. It all goes together. It is one Cayman Islands. East End has no natural resources that they can rely on. It all comes from everywhere. So we have to take care of the country in order to take care of the community. We can't put community first. We have to put country first. I think I'm the only one on this panel right here, right now, that can vote for myself come April 14th.
Thank you, Mr. Frederick. Mr. McLean?
Oh, okay. Thank you. First, please allow me to recognize the women in our community on this International Women's Day and thank them for the impact that they make on this country. Whether you were born here or not, I would like each of you to know that you are valued for the many roles you play in this society. Without you, we would not be here where we are today. I encourage all of us, especially men, to use today as a springboard to visibly and vocally support the meaningful achievements of women, amplify their contributions, and raise awareness about women's equality and lobby for gender parity. Thank you. However, you thought I was finished. Sorry. Let me just say to the people of East End, in particular, in this country in general, election matters. Election has consequences. Your livelihood, your way of life is hinged on who you elect. We need legislators who are not going to bow with the first sign of difficulties. We need proven record legislators who have represented this country, and in particular, in this case, East End, with honesty and integrity. You need people who you can trust. And if you cannot trust them, you feel you cannot trust them, do not vote for them. They are going to sell you the same way they have been bought, no matter where they are. This election is about decency. This election is about bringing back discipline to this country that we have known it to be. If we do not correct it now, your life, your family life will be in jeopardy for the future. And I can tell you, fellow Caymanians, if you re-elect the PPM and that coalition, and anyone who's with them, you are sending the wrong message. You are sending the message that you do not care about your daughters, your sisters, your mothers, your wives, your grandmothers.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. We'll now turn it over to Chamber President Mike Gibbs for some closing remarks.
Thank you, Will. On behalf of the Chamber Council and staff, I would like to thank the East End candidates for participating in this evening's forum, and I trust that the forum will help the East End voters to determine who to vote for when it comes time to go to the polls on the 14th of April. I would also like to thank Foster's for their major sponsorship of the Chamber's candidate forums during this election cycle, as well as Affinity, Bodden's Legal and Corporate, and DART for their sponsorship as well. Please join us tomorrow evening as we welcome the candidates from the constituency of Northside, Debbie Broderick, Johanny J. Ebanks, Justin Ebanks, and Ezed Miller. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you will join us tomorrow evening at the same time. Good night.
Behind everything we do is a promise. Better. Better because we care, because we all have a common goal, to be better at cooking, to be better at eating right, and taking care of ourselves, to live in a better community, to just feel better. Today and tomorrow and the next day. Do it for you. Do it for them. Do it to prove something to yourself. Do it to carry on a family recipe. Or just because. But when you aim for the stars, better just works. We're Fosters. And we're better. Because of you, because of them, because of this place. And because we care.